Hey everybody, welcome. So excited to see everybody again and really fun to see everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Parshas Yisro, Ha'amanti Kedaber. We'll talk more about Emuna in the concept of what's going on. Does Hashem love us? Chas Hashem, does he not love us? Um, how do we understand this? It feels like a flip-flop. It feels like there are good things happening, but then there are things that feel so painful happening. And this is an experience that we all have in our lives. And it brings up a lot of questions. And it also, especially for those who have any kind of trauma history with any kinds of challenging relationships, where sometimes you have people who are blowing hot and cold. Sometimes they were nice, sometimes they're not nice. And then we began to define love as being a mixture of sometimes pain and sometimes giving good, and so that became a really murky kind of a space. And so when that is repeated, when we find ourselves in that kind of situation with a Kadosh Baruch Hu, then we start to question ourselves and we think, okay, so what does this really mean? So we're going to be taking on that question today with Reb Asher, walking on eggshells, right? Because you never know when things are going to get bad, right? We never know when things are going to be painful. So, yes. So, Parshas Yisro, one of the most common questions is the Midrash says, Rashi brings down, Vayishma Yisro, Yisro heard, Mashmua Shama Uva. What was it that he heard? What was the thing that Yisro heard that made him decide to come and join Klal Yisrael? Kriyas Yamsuf Umilchemes Amalek. He heard about the splitting of the sea, and he heard about the war with Amalek. That's what Rashi says, bringing down the Chazal. So he said, all of the nations of the world, as we sing in the Shir Hayam, as we sang, all of the nations of the world heard about the wonders and the miracles that happened to Klal Yisrael when they came out of Mitzrayim. They heard about the plagues. They didn't have the kind of communication that went around the world the way that we have today. But still, the miracles that took place with the 10 plagues and the splitting of the sea, these were of historic, epic proportions. And so certainly this news was making its way all around, that this nation that was slaves, all of a sudden, this incredible happening took place. Okay, all the nations were shaken by what goes on. As it says, all the nations heard. We say in the Shir, all the nations heard. All those that lived in Paleshes, they were astonished. And the Ele Moav, all of the leaders of Moav were shivering in their shoes, and the hearts of those that lived in Canaan melted. Everybody was geschrocken. Everybody was terrified and awestruck by what was going on. And why didn't these events bring anybody else to come and shelter under the wings of the Shekhinah and become Torah observant like Yisro? Only Yisro himself came to that conclusion. Why? What was it about Yisro? It's very interesting to think about the hearing. We don't have mitzvahs every day to fulfill with our ears. Not every day. We have a mitzvah of Kriyas Torah twice a week, but that's also a mitzvah d'Rabbanan. We have a mitzvah of Tkiyas Shofar. We need to hear Kiddush on Shabbos and Havdalah. But we say Shema Yisrael twice a day, right? And so this listening is definitely something that within ourselves we can strengthen our capacity to tune into. What are we supposed to be hearing? Okay, so we're going to be deepening our awareness of how to use our sense of hearing, what it is that we're supposed to be tuning into. So the Sifrei Chasidus, says Reb Asher, Sifrei Chasidus says the reason why Yisro heard things. I agree to see everyone coming in. Thank you so much for being here, and especially if I see your faces, it's so friendly. Hi, everyone. So Yisro, what did Yisro do differently? It says that he He deepened into his concentration. He listened more deeply as he was hearing. Vehetiv lahavana, and he switched on his bina, his havana, his understanding. He listened and he paid attention and he thought things through and he attached his understanding to his hearing. He paid attention to what he was hearing. He didn't just hear something and let it pass on, but he actually heard and sat with the with the with what he was hearing and took in the consequence of what he was hearing. All of the other nations heard about this massive world-shaking events that were taking place with Klal Yisrael, and they all understood what was going on according to their their pre-existing beliefs. They didn't allow it to challenge their beliefs. They believed that the Mazal of Yisrael, okay, they believed in Mazalis. We're going to be talking about the difference between believing in Mazalis and believing in HaKadosh Baruch Hu alone. So the nations believed in the Mazal, that the stars had aligned in such a way that until now, the nation of Israel had been enslaved. They had had a low Mazal. And afterwards, and during that low time, they were enslaved, and Mitzrayim were able to lower them and abuse them. And then all of a sudden, the Mazal changed, and now they had great wealth and wonders, because that's what the nations of the world believe. And we still have people today who believe that the stars, the way that the constellations are aligned, that this is going to define certain aspects of who we are and what's good for us. That's what they believed at the time. That it's the koach of the Mazal, that it was the constellations, that was what was defining what was going on. But Yisro deepened his thought process to think about what was actually happening. And he placed these two events that Rashi brings down, the Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, and the Milchama with Amalek, he put them side by side, and he began to think very deeply about what was going on. And this is where it becomes relevant to what we're talking about. And he asked himself, what's the true Mazal? How could it be that a nation who had been so low in Egypt and then risen so high with the splitting of the sea and all of the plagues, and then also would fall so low that Amalek could attack them? They had just been through all of these miracles, and they had been through a low situation, and then they went to this high situation, and then again they're attacked. Like, what's going on here? A similar kind of question that we might ask ourselves. Over the last couple of years, Klal Yisrael has been through such wrenching experiences. Okay, again, we don't need to recall all the horrific details of everything, but the terrors that Klal Yisrael went through, and the horrors of the captivity, and the miraculous fall of so many of our worst enemies, that if somebody would have told us 5 years ago that within the space of 6 months, our greatest enemies would be just taken off the list one by one, we would find that very hard to believe. Even the highest up in any kind of security measure would find that hard. Rav Noach Weinberg, in his final years, talked about the threat of Iran, that they were the greatest threat to the stability of a nation of Klal Yisrael living in the land of Israel right now, that was the greatest threat. And he talked about the fact that we have to daven to bring them down, to understand what has happened and how the scales have, Be'ez Hashem, been turned. But so many evil people were blotted out in such surprising ways, but with so many losses, so many painful losses. And so we ask ourselves, on a national level, what does this mean? Is Hashem with us? But then what's happening? And then in our own personal lives, we all go through this where we experience such incredible Saturday Shmaya, and we know we have so many brachas, and then we have so many painful, unfathomable things happen to us that we don't understand. What's going on? Am I having hashgacha process? Am I having Saturday Shmaya? Is this Hashem blessing me? Or and then Hashem is punishing me? Like, what's going on? What's this relationship about? And it really creates a lot of wondering in us. How do we understand all of this? Some people only experience Hashem's love when everything is going well. And when things aren't going well, we fall into a despair. And we've been speaking about this in the teachings of Rabbi Asher for a couple of weeks now, that it's much that it's we experience this movement from these two extremes of when everything's going great and things are going well, we feel on top of the world, and then we might come to think, well, it's me, I did this, I was able to succeed, and we might think that we have some pride in what we do. I might actually give ourselves the credit rather than realize it comes from Hashem. And then when things aren't going well, when we feel like we've failed, when painful situations come up and we question ourselves, like, how did my life turn into this? Like, and we think we put in so much effort, and we still find ourselves with such painful things around us. And we ask ourselves, so I'm a failure. I'm to blame. It's me. I must be a failure. And again, we sink into Yush. And we as Rav Asher explains, we find ourselves going between these two poles. So the first thing to understand is that we're not doing something wrong if we find ourselves going between these two poles. We're not dysfunctional. This doesn't mean that we have a lack of emunah. This means this is the human experience. And this experience of the nation was supernatural as far as Yisro was concerned. He looked at those happenings, both of those happenings, not just the incredible miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim, of the exodus from Egypt and the splitting of the sea and the miracles that took place and the destruction of Egypt that was left behind. Clearly, that was also part of the miracles, is that they had been enslaved by a nation that was the pinnacle of society at that time. And in the words of the Pasuk, the way that you see Mitzrayim today is the way you're never going to see them before. As a society, they became completely destroyed and they never recovered from what happened with those plagues. That certainly was the news of the day of what happened to Mitzrayim. And then, in all of these miracles, there was a halo around the nation. And then all of a sudden, Amalek attacks and succeeds in actually creating some damage to Klal Yisrael, in killing some members of Klal Yisrael. So Yisro stood up and he said, one second, how could their Mazal have sunk so deeply, so quickly? That such a nation, such a small nation, would start up with Klal Yisrael to insult them and to curse them and to actually make some headway towards trying to harm them very seriously. And so Yisro stood up and took to heart. Okay, this was again, he listened. He saw that there was something deeper going on. This wasn't just the Mazal, that they were up and they were down and they were up and then they were down. That's not how Mazal works. There was something extraordinary going on. There was something above nature, in the nature of both the rise and the fall. That wasn't just like regular Mazal. Because Bnei Yisrael are under the express guidance, the personal guidance of the God of heaven and earth. And the moment HaKadosh Baruch Hu decided that there was some of the nation that needed to be guided into greater emunah and faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, because that's what happened. They encamped at Refidim, and Chazal tell us that they weakened their spirit in some way. They became a bit weaker. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent them a Molech to strengthen them. And so Yisro listened to the message. He understood that these were no chance happenings, but this was hashgacha pratis. And when we take the whole picture together, it's not about only the good times, the miraculous times that we see. HaKadosh Baruch comes through for us, and that night that will never, ever, ever leave us, where Iran Yamach Shemam, the leaders Yamach Shemam, where they sent over an unheard of amount of destructive bombs over the dwellers of the Holy Land, and not one person was harmed here in the Holy Land, despite the greatest efforts that they put in. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu certainly did, like the miracles of that night have to be embedded in our heads. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is sending a message to the nations that Hashem protects us, whilst at the same time we were still reeling from the horrors that happened so much earlier. Because both of these events, all of these events, are crafted by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to guide us and to teach us. It's not the same, even though it feels the same. Even though those of us that have a trauma background, we could say, well, pain is love or love is pain. No, it's not that love is it's not that we need to interpret pain as love. That's not what it is. It's that we have to understand that everything is hashgacha pratis. Everything is only from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There is no such thing as Mazal or fate. Look, ein Mazal Yisrael. There is no such thing as Mazal. Nothing is predetermined. But everything is dependent on our deeds at any particular given time. And the Rav Moshe Cordovero writes in his Sfarim that that Mazal means the way that things come down at any given moment. There's so many elements that create the hashgacha pratis of any given moment. HaKadosh Baruch Hu takes into consideration everything and then gives us the result that is going to help us to listen to what he wants from us at this moment. When we get a miracle or an outpouring of Sefet Shmaya that feels like a great success, it's to encourage us and it's to help us to understand the path upon which we must go and to show his might and to help us to trust in him more. And if what we receive at a certain time feels like a very painful no, that's not how HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to let it happen right now. That despite the best efforts that we put in, things seem to just fall through our fingers, and we seem to we could very easily sink into self-blame and into recrimination and I'm bad and I'm guilty and into the despair. That is the other side of thinking that we might have done it. But the message is HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to strengthen yourself. HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to be stronger. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us, and he wants us to turn to him. And he also wants us to realize that, yeah, we may make mistakes and we may get things really wrong. And the outcome is only in Hashem's hands, as we say. He alone makes every outcome. So if HaKadosh Baruch Hu has allowed our limitations to play out in such a way that it seems and it appears as if our mistake or our lack of foresight or our lack of understanding might have brought about something, it's only in order to teach us that HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought about this result. And we need to live with humility. We need to live with an awareness that as hard as we try, we're still going to be in this world in a limited physical body. We're going to make mistakes. We don't have access to all of the truth in this world because this is Olam HaSheker. It's a world filled with a mess. It's a very messy world. And finding the truth is very, very, very challenging. And in everything, there's going to be a mixture of falsehood because this world is Olam HaSheker. So we're never going to find full truth. And so we need the humility to realize that we're also a mixture of truth and falsehood. We're also a mixture of a drive to do good and the physical that's going to pull us to lose our temper or sometimes think badly or do things that are not perfect. That's who we are. We didn't cause the result Our deeds don't cause results. Only Kodesh Baruch Hu causes results. It's to teach us that, yeah, we can do tshuva. We're limited, but then we have a chance to bring ourselves to that perfect, beautiful state of tshuva. What is perfect about tshuva is that we're perfectly imperfect. Is that we don't have to be perfect in order to be HaKadosh Baruch Hu's beloved child. Tshuva was created before the world because HaKadosh Baruch Hu saw there was no way that the physical world could exist without us having to fix up things that we did wrong. We're going to make things wrong. And from the beginning of creation, every single generation has not let HaKadosh Baruch Hu down in that way, that we've lived out our limitations. And we've made botches up that if they would have been our responsibility, it would have been a big problem. The fact is, we get to do tshuva. Adam HaRishon did tshuva. Mizmor Shel Yom HaShabbos, Adam HaRishon sang when he saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was going to allow him to do tshuva for having brought destruction and death into the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu allowed him to do tshuva. Yes, HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan was clearly made that Adam and Chava weren't going to live out their entire lives in Gan Eden. The rest of the world was going to be inhabited. So it was clearly part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's plan that they would make dramatic mistakes of epic proportions, and then that they would be exiled, and they would need to then inhabit the rest of the world. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu fulfills his plan for the universe and for mankind through our mistakes. I had a beautiful conversation with a client this week where we went through these ideas just to understand how beautiful it is to be a limited human being. That's what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants of us. He doesn't want us to pretend that we're perfect and puff up with pride and think that we made this success. He doesn't want us to drown in despair at our mistakes. But as in the beautiful words of the piyut that we sing on Yom Kippur, which is one of my favorite all-time favorite poems, where we say, Anu Amecha v'ato Malkeinu, we are your people and you are our king. We are your nation. We are your sheep and you are our shepherd. We say we are a stiff-necked and you are ever compassionate and long-suffering. We are stiff-necked. The Torah calls us a stiff-necked people. We're stubborn. We have all kinds of limitations. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu loves us anyway. We don't have to be perfect to be loved. But we tend to think, I did great, I got it right, and so I got a present from Hashem, I got success. Or I got it wrong, and then Hashem gave me a punishment. And that's not how it works. Because even when we are in our limited state, even when we are again, we could be making a mistake and Hashem could still give us amazing Saturday Shmaya and beautiful brachas. And we're still living a life with tremendous miracles and an outpouring of kindness, even when we're in the impure state. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dwelling with us in the B'tumasam, in the Golas, it says HaKadosh Baruch Hu is dwelling with us B'tach Tumasam. So we don't have to be perfect to get Saturday Shmaya and brachas. And we don't have to be in the worst state in order to have a painful experience. In fact, no, we could get sometimes very painful experiences, and they are to encourage us that there's more emunah, there's more that we can get, that we haven't accessed all of the potential that we have within us. And so the success and the miracles that we experience are not to make us proud, and the painful things we experience as failure or losses are not to make us despair, even though it's natural that we're going to have those, we're in a flux between those two states. But that's not what HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants us to do. He wants us to listen. He wants us to listen, and what are we listening for? B'shgacha pratis. We're listening for the truth underneath all of this, that everything is only from Hashem, that we're not bad because we sinned, and we're not unlovable or banished from the kingdom of Hashem if we're not perfect, and we're not on top of the world, and therefore we can rely on ourselves without a Kodesh Baruch Hu, even when we're receiving miracles. But We are always dependent on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. We cannot ever sit back on our laurels and say, um, you know, since I have the strength and power and I did this success, so I can rely on myself forever. But we always have to realize that Kadosh Baruch Hu is the one that's in control, and we have to listen and hear the Hashgacha Pratis behind all of the events. That's what Yisro heard. He heard that it wasn't Mazal, and it wasn't fate, and it wasn't the deeds this way or the other. It's Kadosh Baruch Hu encouraging his nation, bringing them to the point of recognizing they are chosen. And being chosen means I'm choosing you also to know that you have even more potential than you're actualizing. And sometimes you're going to have to live with the truth that in order to actualize yourself and your potential, become who you can truly be, I'm going to give you more circumstances where they may be painful ones, where you're going to be able to actualize even more of your capacity for emunah. We also see this, Rav says, in the stick that the Kodesh Baruch Hu gave to Moshe Rabbeinu. There were those among Klal Yisrael that also believed in the Mazalos. They also believed in fate and in that things are destined from beginning. And they thought that the stick that was in Moshe Rabbeinu's hands had a mazal, that it was just a mazal stick. It had its own kind of power, and that it could hit the waters, and it could hit the various elements in Mitzrayim, in Egypt, and that it would bring about the revenge on the nation of Egypt that had enslaved Klal Yisrael. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Moshe, take that staff that's in your hand, the same one that you hit the sea with, take it in your hand and go. And Rashi says this on Parshas B'Shalach, that Dafka at that time, the same stick that was used in the plagues, that was used to bring out the fresh water for the nation to drink in Parshas B'Shalach. So that Klal Yisrael wouldn't think that the stick could only bring about punishment, but that it wasn't about the stick. Again, we have to hear underneath that it's not about the messenger. It's not the stick that this has one use and that's what it's for, but everything has the potential to be used in multiple ways the way Kadosh Baruch Hu wants it. That a stick that could be used for to bring a plague upon Mitzrayim, that same stick is used to bring a blessing of sweet waters to drink. And in our own lives, we could have things that we might think, well, this is destined to be a plague on me. This is destined to be a bracha for me. HaKadosh Baruch Hu has many ways to bring about the blessings that he wants to bring us and to teach us the lessons of how to strengthen ourselves. I want to end with one beautiful thought that I saw in the Divrei Yisrael of Mazal. It's on Parshas Vayakel, where we're saying that Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron and Cohen were instructed to gather all of the nation. We know that they were going to come together, but Petach Oyhel Moed at the entrance to the Oyhel Moed, and the whole Mishkan that was erected, that Moshe Rabbeinu erected at the behest of a Kadosh Baruch, at the command of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, was brought about to atone for the sin of the golden calf. And so it was brought into Teshuva. Again, the same theme of we mess up, we through our limitations are going to do things that are not right. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings us to this beautiful state of Teshuva, wherein we get to return to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And it says, Petach Oyel Moed. The pasuk says, what is it? And so the Divrei Yisrael asks, what does it mean, Petach Oyel Moed? According to the words where it says, Kadosh Baruch Hu says to Klal Yisrael, Pischuli Petach Shel Tshuva, open up for me, and open a tiny opening of the size of a needlehead, and I will open up for you a Petach the size of an olam. I will open up for you a huge opening. What's the olam? Says the Divrei Yisrael. That was the hall of the Mishkan. That the tshuva of Klal Yisrael, that's what built the Mishkan. And it was in the schos of the tshuva the Klal Yisrael. That's why Kodesh Baruch Hu said to Moshe Rabbeinu, gather all the people. It was the people, the Am together in their tshuva, the whole tshuva of Klal Yisrael. That was what brought about the opening of the tshuva of the Mishkan, where they would have their full atonement. Be'ezah Hashem, the teshuva of our Klal Yisrael, of all of us together. That's what's going to bring about the third Beis Hamikdash. It's all of us are going to do tshuva together, and tshuva cannot exist without some mistake first, without having messed up, without having lived out the frailty of the human condition in some way by the mistakes that we're going to make, because the Kodesh Baruch Hu has made us that way. And Rav Ashi says, from the flesh existence that I have, from how weak I am, from the fact that I lose my temper, and the fact that I at the end of the day I'm tired and I'm hungry and I don't always have this patience and strength for everything that comes my way, and the fact that I see how weak I am, I realize that I cannot live in this world without the Kodesh Baruch Hu. No matter how much I try, no matter how much I do, I'm dependent on Kodesh Baruch Hu. And through our limitations, through witnessing and the felt experience of being limited, we come to rely on Kodesh Baruch Hu, and then we come to do tshuva, to return to Kodesh Baruch Hu. And that return of knowing, I return that all the strength to Kodesh Baruch Hu, and I return my listening, my inner heart to Kodesh Baruch Hu, and I know that I only rely on Hashem. We're all going to have the moments where we think we can do something, and we're always going to have moments of distance and then closeness. That's the heartbeat of creation. Is that we have a thought that takes us away, and then a thought that comes close. That's the heart that's constantly beating and taking in the blood and then giving it out. That's the lungs that are constantly breathing in and breathing out. That's the rhythm of the waves that the tide comes in and out, and the ocean is constantly beating with that beat of creation. That togetherness and apart is a theme of creation. And so we're going to be close with Hashem and then feel a distance and then come back. And that's not dysfunctional, and that's not a problem. That's the nature of the world. And the coming back is the hashev, is the teshuva, is the return to Kodesh Baruch Hu. So the distance that's created by our limitations is not a problem. The problem is, what are we going to do after that? And there is the resolution is the teshuva, and the teshuva of the nation as a whole, of us all coming together in whatever way we can, humbly returning to Kodesh Baruch Hu as his beloved children, no matter what's going on. That is what's going to bring about that new Heichal will come Be'ez Hashem, down in fire from the Rebbeinu Shalom, a gift to all Klal Yisrael, and we will be able to live in that eternal state of tshuva, of closeness, return to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Thank you so much for being here. Yeah, you want to say something? I want to hear from you.
Oh, I wrote you a question. First of all, is this recorded, by the way?
Yes, this is recorded.
Okay, I just came on because I saw it in my email. I'm like, oh, I'm going to catch it. Okay.
Great. I'm so grateful. I'm going to go in right now and check on the chat and see where I see. Oh, 1 second. Let's see the chat. Okay. Anybody who has a question, go put it into the chat. Let's have a look.
I had put it personally to you. But
got it.
But, do you see it?
I see it. Would you prefer me not to read it out?
No, you could read it. I just didn't want to bother anybody with it. Okay.
So what about when the pain becomes incapacitating? Does pain signal to us that we aren't accepting Hashem's will? Okay, a beautiful question. And let's talk a bit about pain, okay? Because pain is one of the most misunderstood signals in our lives, okay? I'm going to introduce this topic by first of all saying that we have a pasuk in Tehillim, Imai Anochi B'tzara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with us in the pain. And what we can also understand from that is, to the degree that we have pain, to that degree we have a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Imay Anochi, how much is a Kodesh Baruch Hu with us? B'tzara, in the pain. That a Kodesh Baruch Hu brings us knowledge of Him through our painful experiences. As it says in the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, marbe chachma, or marbedeya, marbetzar. The more knowledge we have, the more pain we have. The more understanding of Kodesh Baruch Hu we have, the more pain we carry. So pain, the emotional, spiritual pain that we have, not a punishment. It is a connection. It is a method of connecting us with a Kadosh Baruch Hu's pain. It is a way that a Kadosh Baruch Hu shares with us the undercurrent of the world. Reb Asher mentioned over and over again that the Shechina, the dwelling, the way of a Kadosh Baruch Hu's dwelling in this world is rolling in the streets. The tsar of the Shechina, the pain of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, that is together with the lowest members of Klal Yisrael. If we think about the lowest addicts, those that are sitting in prisons, the people who've done the worst kinds of things, the Kadosh Baruch is with them. HaKadosh Baruch is dwelling with the lowest of our nation and with us in our lowest moments. And the pain of a Kadosh Baruch, of the Shechina means the dwelling. It's the part of a Kadosh Baruch that dwells inside us, is in tremendous pain. Now, we know a Kadosh Baruch can end that pain at any moment. It's in his hands, clearly. And so if we call it growing pains, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu recognizes that I think that the most frequently asked question that I've ever got in all of my 25 years of teaching Emunah B'tachon and coaching women in incredibly painful situations, most oft asked question is, isn't there a way to come close to Kadosh Baruch Hu without pain? And the short answer is no. Really, the only way to get close to Kadosh Baruch Hu is through pain, because the only thing that really motivates us is pain. Think about the time in your life when you had no pain, if there was one. I hope that everybody has some kind of time in their life where things were easier, okay, where there was no pain and no challenge. Most of us in those kinds of times, we don't necessarily have the motivation to do much spiritual growth. If it comes after a period of spiritual pain, then maybe we now have the breather we need in order to be able to make the most of the movement that we had before. Yes, when we have success and brachas, but when they've come after the pain, okay? Certainly, but when I want you to again understand that, yes, it comes from a happy place afterwards, but when we can compare it with the pain that we had before, then we can feel tremendous satisfaction and gratitude. But if we just got those things without having had the pain first, if we only got blessings and gifts and we didn't have any pain, we didn't have the absence of that, we would think it's coming to me, I deserve it, and we wouldn't necessarily realize the contrast of, wow, look what I went through and now look what I have, and then experience the gratitude. The challenges that we go through, they hurt us and they help us recognize places within ourselves that we never knew we had. Especially when what you're mentioning in the question is that when there could be a situation that is so painful that it is incapacitating. So the answer is, at that moment, you're not supposed to be doing something more. Sometimes we judge ourselves in our moments of pain. We're not supposed to judge ourselves in our moments of pain. In fact, the Torah says you cannot, don't talk to a person in his moments of great anger. And the Mefarshim say doesn't mean that he's in a rage, but in a moment where he's in intense pain, where something is intensely happening at that time, that's not a time to talk to a person. That's not a time to try and speak rationally to a person. In a time where a person is in the great bitterness of deep suffering, where we feel that we just can't do more, at that time, sometimes it's the time to let go into Hashem's arms and say, I can't do. I can't. We're not supposed to do more than we can do, and allowing ourselves to be helpless in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's hands is sometimes the message that we're supposed to be in. If we feel incapacitated, then we are, okay. Then we're in that space, and we can be in that vulnerable space of saying, I'm not in control of this. I'm just not, okay. And when the opportunity comes, it's like we're in a river and we're in a current and we're going down. But when that thing to hold on to presents itself, we'll grab onto it and we'll hold on. And Hashem will send that. We don't know how far down the stream we have to go. But sometimes those things do just take us downstream. And it's not over until it's over. One of the lessons that I've learned from my life and other people's lives is that sometimes it's just not over until it's over. It's just not finished. All kinds of life situations, like we think it's about to end. It's just not over until it's finished. Whatever that situation is, the Kadosh Baruch Hu has his plan. We have a tikkun that we need to go through, and we don't have a clue. The things could be so strange, and we don't have an understanding. But when it's going to be over, Hashem's going to send that message. It's going to be there. There's going to be that branch that we can hold onto, the rock we can climb onto. There's going to be some way back. We're never going to be, completely sent off the cliff. We're not going to be sent off. We do sometimes experience ourselves as, I don't have the capacity to manage this, and that's a message of humility. In fact, the Divrei Yisrael of Message says that the more we learn, the more humble we must become, and the more we think we're big, the smaller we have become. That Hashem sometimes sends us life situations that are so bigger than us in order to help us to recognize his power. In fact, soon after October 7th, I had at that time, I'm sure many of you will remember, we had the Safe Haven get-togethers where we were talking about different things and we were able to share different things. And one of the takeaways, one of the participants, an old friend and participant, said to me, what are we supposed to be taking away from this? The horror was so great. And I told her that one of my personal takeaways was that creation and Kadosh Baruch Hu is just so much bigger than I thought before. Not that I don't think Hashem is big, but that when we're faced with something that we are so incapable of understanding and holding, it makes us stretch our comprehension even bigger. That the answers Hashem has are going to be even bigger than this, even bigger than I can fathom. And no, I don't have to be able to hold it all. I don't have to be able to manage this. It's okay not to manage, and sometimes we have to allow ourselves to, if we need a day in bed under the covers just crying, that's okay. We can be there in that space, and sometimes that's the most healing thing that we can do, because it regulates us. It helps us get back into the perspective of, yeah, I'm small. I cannot do this. I can't do this without you. You're way bigger than this. You created this. You created whatever's going on behind this, and I cannot do this. And we don't have to be big enough, to hold it all. We're not. We're very, very small. And so that's one of the lessons that we can take. And it's a lesson of humility in the face of massive happenings, which there are massive happenings all around the world. In so many ways, the last couple of years have been years of massive happenings. And one of the lessons is to, in our own eyes, not to make us despair and not to make us unimportant in our own eyes, but just to give us perspective in our eyes. Did that help? Did that help? Okay.
That really helped. I'm going to thank you so much. And how do we get the recording? Do you send that by email afterward?
Yeah, everybody who got the link, if you got the link, then you will also get the recording.
And it was totally hashgacha that I got your email because I needed this today. So it was really wonderful and really special. Looking forward to future ones.
Great.
Okay, call to everybody. Have a good Shabbos.
I'm so glad to see you here. And you.
Good Shabbos. Okay, bye-bye. Good Shabbos. Bye.
Good Shabbos. And to, yes, you who added on in the comments there that you feel so much closer to Hashem when you get the blessings in a good way. Yes, but again, I want you to think honestly, would it have been the same way if you would only have always received good? Or is it also as we look at, the greatest art is where we have the dark and the light, where we can see both. And that's how it is in our lives. When we have the pain, and then we have the contrast with the light, and we can recognize the good because of the pain that we've had. It's so much stronger. Thank you for your kind comments. It's so much more powerful, and then it brings us to a new place of connection. When we feel grateful to something, it seems to me, and again, I'm open to hearing more, but it seems to me that it doesn't necessarily take us to a place of connection unless we've allowed ourselves to grow from the pain. When we've discovered the newer parts of ourselves, the more powerful parts of ourselves that have been impacted by pain, then we can take those places and turn them into gratitude. And just to end on this note, Rebbitzin Batsheva Kanievska Leah Shalom. She carried the pain of a lot of Klal Yisrael. And at a certain point, one of her daughters said to her, Mommy, why do you carry the pain so much? Maybe it's not so healthy for you. And she said that when we feel the pain of Klal Yisrael, that actually can lessen our own personal measure of pain. And so being nice im chavere, carrying the burden with our friend, sharing, listening to a friend's pain. This can actually, again, not that we need to do it shaloi lishma, but even if we do it shaloi lishma, not for its own sake, it doesn't. It's also a version of doing the right thing. It can lessen our own personal pain, but we can't negotiate less pain. Meaning you're gonna have pain, whichever you look at it. We're going to have pain in this world. This is the world olam hatlaot, Chazal call it. It's a world of struggles. We're going to have pain, and that pain is meant to draw us close to Kadosh Baruch Hu. And according to the pain, is the closest to Hashem. The fum saro agro. According to the pain is the reward. I mean, according to the struggle is going to be the closest to Hashem. Is the imun, is the faith. That's the balance of this world. So pain is not a punishment in any way. Pain doesn't mean that we did something wrong. Pain means there's more inside us. It's a flag for transformation. That's what pain is. It's a flag saying, look inside because there's more that needs to be transformed from potential into actual. And that's what pain comes to teach us. And we have unlimited capacity. So I wish everybody, let's all share the pain of Klal Yisrael. Let's share the pain of the Shechina. Let's recognize that we're limited human beings. We're small. Kadosh Baruch is way bigger than we can grasp, and he's not doing this to distance ourselves or make us be miyash, but the underlying message of all of it that we can listen into is the hashgacha pratis, that we're chosen, that we are beloved, that he's in this with us, and that's why we have these dual experiences, dramatically in our lives, is to draw us close to him. Be'ez Hashem. Just check the chat and see if there's anything else that somebody wanted to respond to.
Dear Chaya, I just want to say thank you so much for all your wisdom, and we are so blessed and fortunate to learn from you. God bless you. This is Shirley.
Hi, Shirley. Shirley, thank you so much. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you speaking up as well. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you.
Shabbos. Thank you.
Good Shabbos. Great to see you. Thanks so much. Thanks, everybody. I'm so honored to be able to share this space with you, and I truly hope that we will continue to grow in Emunah together. Good Shabbos. Bye, everyone.